On today's Locked On Texans podcast, Cody and I look at leaving Tytus Howard at left guard. Is that the right decision? And the importance of going into the bye week 3-3 for the Houston Texans.
You are Locked On Texans, your daily Houston Texans podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Titus Tuesday, it's Titus Tuesday, it's Titus Tuesday, it's Texan Tuesday. It's another episode of the Locked On Texans on Tuesday. I am your Texans football analyst, John, some sports guy Hickman. Joining me, as always, is your Texan credential media member, Sports Illustrated's own Cody Davis. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time, the Game Time app. Create an account, use promo code Locked On NFL for $20 off your first purchase. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Thank you to all of our new listeners. Make sure that you subscribe, like, and comment to the Locked On Texans podcast on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. And also to our returning players from the Himalayas, thank you for coming back for another episode of the Locked On Texans podcast. We're going to look at how should we judge Nick Caserio. That's going to be an interesting conversation. Guys, should the Houston Texans leave Tytus Howard at left guard? I think
revisiting that topic.
That's something that I'm going to eat a lot of crow on. But Cody, let's kick this off with the importance of going into the bye week 3-3 for the Houston Texans. First-time head coach DeMeco Ryans, first-year rookie quarterback C.J. Stroud, a young team. How important is it for this team to go into the bye week 3-3?
In the words of Coach DeMeco Ryans, he said it right after the game on Sunday. He repeated again on Monday when we had an opportunity to talk to him that going into the bye week at 500, 3-3, give this team something to look forward to for the future. And not only that, it also gives him and his coaching staff an opportunity to correct all of the mistakes that they need to correct in a positive way. And when he said that, John, that was really, really telling, because 6 games into the season, the Houston Texans are 3-3 for the first time since 2018. And for the first time since 2019, they are either at 500 or above. And this bye week is definitely going to say a lot for this team because, look, John, you already know me. Coming into this season, I thought that this was going to be a season of learning and development. I did not have the Houston Texans sitting at 500, 6 games into the season. However, not only are they 3-3 with a winning record for the first time. Matter of fact, ladies and gentlemen, let's just break this down really, really quick. John and myself, we have been covering this team on this show since the 2019 season. John, do you realize this is the very first time at the bye week we're covering the Houston Texans with a winning record since then?
They didn't have one the season they went up 24-0?
Yeah, that's the 2019 season.
They didn't have a winning record at that bye week?
No, they did. That's what I'm saying. That's the last time we covered this team that had a winning record. Wow. That's a very long time. John, you and I talked about this a couple weeks ago. I believe it was right after the game against the Pittsburgh Steelers. And I just want to revisit it really, really quick. They still have a favorable schedule because right after you come back from the bye, you have a game against the Carolina Panthers, the Buccaneers, the Cincinnati Bengals, and the Arizona Cardinals. Those are your next 4 games. And this is a situation where I can honestly see the Texans go 3-1. Of course, that one can possibly come against Cincinnati. However, they've been going through their own struggles. But John, when you just take a look at this team, winning record, you know, Coach DeMeco Ryans has really done a lot to change this organization. You take a look at the phenomenal play of C.J. Stroud, something you and I really going to dive into later on in the week. And it's not just him. It's everybody on both sides of the ball really just doing their thing. The 2023 campaign can really be something special for this team.
I think the importance of going into the bye week 3-3, sitting at 500 for the first time since 2019 is you have something to build off of to move forward with. That has been absent for this team in the past 3 seasons, dating back to Deshaun Watson's last year. Then you look at the following year, bringing in Tyrod Taylor. Then last year, you look at the quarterback by committee situation towards the end of the year. But the previous years, and mainly the last 2 seasons, there was nothing to build off of but scouting, getting ready for the draft. Now you look at a team, Cody, you ran off the next 4 games. You come back and you play against the defeated Carolina Panthers, the Carolina Panthers, Tampa Bay, Cincinnati, Arizona. But then when you get to that November 26th game, that's against the Jacksonville Jaguars. And one thing we're going to talk about this week is how and if and when Houston should gauge the trade market. The trade deadline is coming up in a couple of weeks. Should Houston go out and make a move? And what should Houston do in terms of improving their roster? The previous 2 seasons, there was no real reason for Houston to go out there and improve a roster. They had nothing to build off of on. And honestly, there was no reason to compete. You competed, maybe you don't get CJ Stroud, and he's a big reason why you're here right now. So I think that's the biggest takeaway for me right now is you have a real, in terms of football, in terms of winning games, you have something to build off of right now. And I like not CJ Stroud's, but I like DeMeco Ryan's quote. And we can go back and give us some time to, number one, get healthier. It's still a team that's dealing with some banged up knickknacks and between the players and everything. Across the offensive line still. Your linebacker core is still banged up a little bit. Your DB room is banged up. I can't wait to see Derek Stingley get back out on the field with how Steven Nelson has been playing, with how Shaq Griffin has been playing. He's been playing some good football, right? And speaking of that, we still got to wait word to see what's going on with Eric Murray, who that may be an extended period of time. So this gives you an opportunity to give MJ Stewart some time in the film room and him get coached up and whatever. So that week off that the Houston Texans are getting for this bye week, it's important for that. But it's also important for guys to come in and see, okay, we did this pretty good, but now we have a reason to be better. I forget which player it was. I believe it was either Sheldon Rankins or Hassan Ridgeway. But when you talk to these guys, they're not playing for a top pick. They're not playing to give a pick away to Arizona. They're playing to win games. And I think overall, this bye week allows Nick Caserio more time, DeMeco Ryans more time for those 2 minds to come in, sit in the room and say, okay, listen, the next 5 games we have, say, 3 winnable games. And I'm including Jacksonville as a winnable game because they've beat them before in dominant fashion. And right now, Houston owns the tiebreaker over them.
By the way, and Trevor Lawrence is dealing with an injury right now.
He's also dealing with an injury.
And at the time of this recording, we haven't heard word whether how bad the injury is or how much time he's going to miss.
Not only is Trevor Lawrence dealing with an injury, but now you look at the Tennessee Titans. Ryan Tannehill was taken out on the game on the card. Anthony Richardson is going to be out probably for the year. Yeah. And Gardner Minshew just had a terrible game. So if I'm DeMeco Ryans and if I'm I'm Nick Caserio, I'm looking at our roster and I'm saying to myself, we have an opportunity to do something special here. We have an opportunity to do something. And for Nick Caserio, you have an experience as a general manager. For DeMeco Ryans coming over from San Fran. But we got an opportunity to really take this roster, look at our weaknesses, and then scout the NFL. Call teams. Hey, I know you're having a fire sale, or I know you may want to move on from some of these guys, Denver or Carolina or whoever. And then you can put yourself in a position to get better because you got this extra time that you don't have to game plan for the next team. I'm not counting out the Carolina Panthers, but this week off is important for Houston because for the first time in forever, they have a reason to be better. So with that reason, I'm curious to see between now and that trade deadline if Houston, and I think they need to go get Frank Clark, by the way. He was released by the Denver Broncos, and I think he'd boost up this defensive line. But can Houston go out there and either make a trade or just see who's going to get released, who's going to get moved on from, and make sure that this roster is as talented as it can be without mortgaging your future, without spending too much money, because you have a reason to be good now. There's a real shot for this team to make the playoffs, to win this division. and it's crazy we're having this conversation. A lot of people call me crazy when I mention this early in the offseason. And am I getting ahead of myself? Maybe, but it's right there. The Houston Texans are currently number 2 in the AFC South.
That is wild. But John,
Number two.
here's the crazy part about it. I'm looking at the schedule right now. So we already talked about all the games up until Jacksonville, but right after that, you have a home game against the Denver Broncos, and by then they're probably going to be throwing out their D team. The New York Jets, I mean, that's a team, given everything that's going on with Aaron Rodgers, even though their defense is still really good, that is still somewhat of a winnable game. And right after that, you got Tennessee, Cleveland, Tennessee, and Indy. Like, look, and ladies and gentlemen, please keep this in mind. We are not about to sit here and say that the Houston Texans are about to go on like a 10, 11 game win streak. We are not saying that, but it's just crazy to sit here 6 games into a season and think to yourself, not only do the Texans have a winnable record, but John, to your point, and you was on board, one of the few people on board with this, they have an opportunity to win their division and make the playoffs. Which, if they do that, and I understand the schedule was fairly easy, but if they do that, all of that is just going to do is expedite the learning period for your rookie, sophomore, and your coaching staff.
And when we look at who leads the team that leads the AFC South right now, the Jacksonville Jaguars, they're currently sitting at 4-2 until they play Houston, the Saints, the Steelers, the 49ers, and the Tennessee Titans. And that division game was always going to be competitive. So they have a very difficult run to go through. And that could be, they may not win all of those games, right? But you can get banged up. You can get, you're playing against the Steelers and the 49ers in back-to-back weeks. So Houston has an opportunity to capture this moment, and I'm curious to see what changes they make. The whole 9 guys, we can't sit here and say, oh, this is not an opportunity for them to get better. We've got to talk about leaving Tytus Howard at left guard. I think they're going to take a lot of time this bye week to look at film and figure out, is this the right move until the time being. Hey guys, I am John Hickman, of course, host of Locked On Texans, and I got a quick question that I want to ask you about. Do you ever feel like your brain is getting in its own way? Like, what you should do was good for you, but you just can't do it. Let's be real about it. That happens to me, right? With the strenuous days, sometimes I feel like my brain just isn't working as properly as I wanted to. And I'm going to tell you what helped me out a lot: therapy. Therapy can help you figure out what's holding you back so you can work for yourself instead of working against yourself. If you're thinking about starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online, designed to be convenient, flexible, and suitable to your schedule. Just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist and switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Make your brain your friend with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/lockedon today to get started. 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedon. Sunday nights, Monday nights, Thursday, Saturday, college, NFL, basketball, NBA, college, it doesn't matter. With DoorDash, you want a good meal without leaving your comfort of your home. They got exactly what you need. Order pizza, wings, soda, burgers, Popeyes, churches, it doesn't matter. Whatever you want, you can order it on DoorDash and get it delivered without missing the game. Kick back and kick off with unbeatable deals on everything you need for the watch party or tailgate. Score football season's best deals on groceries, restaurants, retail, and much more. Get prepared before game day. Stock up on all of your favorite appetizers and order all of your tailgate gear on DoorDash. Then get ready to watch your team win, especially if you're a Houston Texans fan, winning 3 out of your last 4 games. You can make sure that you continue to eat good, watch your team win with DoorDash, and you don't even got to leave your couch. Get 50% off up to $10 value when you spend $15 or more on your first order. When you download the DoorDash app, enter code LOCK23. Again, download the DoorDash app, enter code LOCK23 for 50% off up to a $10 value.
Welcome back in, ladies and gentlemen, to this Tuesday installment of Locked On Texans. John and myself want to revisit a topic that we talked about last week with the return of Tytus Howard. He played his very first game against the Atlanta Falcons and the Texans Week 5 defeat. We got into somewhat of a debate on whether or not it would be in the Texans' best interest to keep Tytus Howard at left guard. John, of course, I was on board with keeping Titus at that position because the one thing that I always kept going back to with Coach DeMeco Ryans in this offensive line, he said moving forward that they was going to continue to put their best starting 5 linemen out there, which was Laramie Tunsil, Tytus Howard, Jared Patterson, Shaq Mason, and George Fant. And at the time, George Fant was this team highest graded lineman. Now, I know on Sunday, the offensive line, they didn't have their best performance. As a matter of fact, they gave up 2 sacks, which I believe ended a streak where they went 122 snaps without a sack. I never thought I would see a stat like that here. Yeah. And passing snap. I never thought I would see a record like that here in the city of Houston. However, we all know that this offensive line wasn't going to be perfect throughout the rest of the season. However, John, when you consider the fact that at least in the rushing attack, I think that left side was 1 or 2 steps ahead of the right side. And that's part of the reason why when you take a look at the production that we saw out of the rushing attack against the New Orleans Saints, do you still feel that they should consider moving Tytus Howard back to right tackle, or do you think you just stick with Coach DeMeco Ryans do? You put your best starting 5 out there, which means he will continue to play left guard.
Well, somebody's an NFL head coach with NFL playing experience, NFL defensive coordinator and coaching experience, and now head coaching experience. And the other guy is just a podcaster here in Houston, recorded in his home, covering your team every day here on the Locked On Texans podcast. Obviously, it's working out for Houston right now. They've had their best in terms of, I thought this is their best effort. And I thought that if Houston would have given, and I hate to say this, if Devin Singletary would have had more opportunities to carry the ball, we would have seen a better output. But when I look at how Houston was able to run the ball successfully against the New Orleans Saints, when I look at specifically Devin Singletary, 23 yards on the left side of the ball running towards in between the tight end and the tackle, Laramie Tunsil. 14 yards on the left side running in between Tytus Howard, Tytus Howard's way. Then you look at what happened between Jared Patterson and Tytus Howard on combo blocks. That he rushed for 9 yards. But when I look at the yards per carry for the left side of the ball, 7.7, 7. They were better. They were better running to that side. They were better going to the side of their 2 best linemen on the offensive line, and Tytus Howard and Laramie Tunsil, and it showed. And when you look at for Devin Singletary, the opposite side, 3 yards and 2 yards, 1 yard per carry going to the right guard side, 3 yards per carry going to the middle right between the center and right guard side. So for Houston, they know what their plan is, and right now, leaving Laramie Tunsil at left tackle, leaving Tytus Howard at left guard, that seems to be their best offensive line to establish what they want to establish. And by all means, continue to make it work. I was wrong in that. I can be wrong. Looking at what they did last week for Dameon Pierce, he was better on the right side of the ball for both last week and this week against the New Orleans Saints. But Houston was much more effective on the ground when they ran towards the side of Laramie Tunsil and Tytus Howard. I have nothing else to say. That's the right move. I think we look at the importance of Houston going into the bye week. Maybe this is an opportunity to see if Juice Scruggs can come back and he'll get that extra time that he needed to watch film and see what they want to do. So I'm curious to see if and when Juice plays this year, because obviously it'll only be at the left guard position or the center position. But if they're not ready for him, or if they feel like this is the best we're going to get right now, with all things considered, even with Juice Scruggs being able to play football again, then by all means, leave Tytus Howard at left guard. Eventually, he will have to go back to right tackle. Eventually. But they're in a critical stretch right now in games, and if they do not make the decision during the bye week, like if we don't come out when they play the Carolina Panthers, which probably will be the best game to debut Tytus Howard back at right tackle, Juice back in between the center or left guard position because of how weak that team is right now, not taking no NFL team for granted. But if they don't come out initially and do it like that, then I wonder if they're going to leave the lineup as is for the rest of the year.
I honestly do think they will. But John, just like what we did with that conversation last week, I do want to look at this Juice Scruggs situation because I just think they're best at keeping Jerry Patterson in at center. I mean, this is a guy out of 38 centers that's ranked at their position right now. He's 25th. Now, I understand that's not a number that's going to be like, oh my God, Jerry Patterson is that good, whatever the case might be. But you have to keep in mind that he has done a very solid job because you're looking at a rookie who was a third string center basically come in and fill a vacant void due to injuries. And I understand why Juice Scruggs was drafted. I get it. I understand it, John. But I just don't want to see the Texans experiment, put in Juice Scruggs back into this lineup. And it's a situation where his lack of experience kind of hindered this offensive line. I only say that because let's just say if that's the only change that they make, how much will that hamper Tytus Howard, who is still trying to come back as well? Because look, even though he had this bye week coming up, he is still trying to work himself back in game shape because not only did he miss the first 4 games of the season, but he missed all of preseason and he missed majority, if not all of training camp after he went down with a hand injury. And I understand. I know a lot of people might look at that and hear it and think to themselves, that's not going to mean much to a veteran like Tytus Howard. And I get that understanding, but at the same time, you have to keep in mind that he has to work himself back into the Tytus Howard that he was last year that got him that big bag.
I don't think I'm too worried about Titus getting back in the game shape. I thought for the past 2 games, I thought he looked good, especially going back against the Saints.
Yeah, but I'm just saying
if
you throw somebody like Juice Scruggs, who we haven't seen in an extremely long time, and you replace him with somebody like Jared Patterson, once again, I'm not sitting here, hailing Patterson as an all Pro Bowl caliber center or whatever the case might be, but I'm just saying I think there's more of a benefit keeping him at that center position because not only does he have more experience than Juice, but he also has camaraderie and chemistry with the 4 guys he's been playing with.
Yeah, Houston this is the bye week. This is an opportunity for, to see because if you can get better, if you can maximize, then why not do it, right? And
that's true.
If Jared is playing, and I thought he's played fairly good, all things considered, the situation. If Jared's playing that good, but if you can get Juice out there to play to the level that he was playing before he got hurt, and Tytus Howard back over at right tackle, who I think can just wake up in the morning, yawn, brush his teeth, and play right tackle, then that could be the ultimate offensive line for Houston. So this is on Houston. This is on Nick Caserio. This is on the coaching staff, Chris Strouser, DeMeco Ryans. This is on them to figure out, oh man, but can we get better? And we talked about Houston getting better through roster changes, but can Houston get better with depth changes? If so, get better. Make that change. And so I think, again, if it doesn't happen right out of the bye, then it may not happen for a while. But I think eventually Tytus Howard has to go back to right tackle. And again, I put it like this, man. If it's working, don't fix. If it's broke, don't fix it. If it's not broke, don't fix it. Excuse me. But if you can get better, and when I say get better, not only do they have to go through that stretch of playing Carolina, Tampa, Cincinnati, Arizona, Jacksonville, then you got Denver, who I'm not necessarily too worried about, but you also have New York, Tennessee, Cleveland, and Tennessee after Denver. Each one of those teams have monsters on that defensive line. But I tell you what, do you guys remember the last time Tytus Howard went up against Myles Garrett? Yeah. So I want to see Houston maximize their potential. You shouldn't have to worry when you're buying tickets to your next big event. Game Time is the fastest and easiest way to buy all tickets for all sporting events, music events, comedy events, theater events near you in the city of Houston and your surrounding area, in and out of the state. the greatest state in the world, Texas. Listen, they got killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their best price guarantee. Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying tickets away. Super simple. It's super easy. They got zone deals where you pick the section and Game Time picks the seats for an average of 18% savings. And then on top of that, the Game Time guarantee means you'll always get the best price. If you find tickets in the same section or row for less, Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms and conditions apply. Again, create an account, redeem code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest price guaranteed. Welcome back in, Locked On Texans listeners and viewers. Before I hand it off to Cody, I want to take 30 seconds and say shout out to my class reunion, the class of 2010 and 2011 mega reunion for Ross Shaw, Sterling High School. Y'all know what it is. We had a great time this weekend. It's good seeing all of my old classmates. We all doing big things, and I love each and every one of you guys. Now, and shout out to my boy TP and my boy Coach Tug. Now, back to the Houston Texans. Nick Caserio, how should we judge him? Last time we talked, I believe I gave him a C. Cody, has that changed for you? Your last rating, your grading? How are you looking right now?
Right now, man, I'm a hold on from grading Caserio. But the only reason why we're talking about this is because later on today, we're going to have an opportunity to hear from Caserio with the Texans entering their bye week. And I'm kind of conflicted on how we should judge Caserio because first and foremost, this is going to be the very first time that we are talking to Caserio mid-season with the Texans having a winnable record. This is the first time that we're going to be talking to Caserio with this franchise actually playing for something. And this is going to be the first time where we are talking to Caserio after having a very good offseason, from the hiring of the head coach to the players that you brought in through free agency and through the players that you brought in through the draft. And John, you know me, I've been on this bandwagon for the longest. First and foremost, like everything else, I want to give it 3 years. And this is, of course, Nick Caserio's third year at the helm as the general manager of the Houston Texans. I know some people, and I think you are one of them, hold him accountable for the hiring of David Culley, Lovie Smith, the players that you got in the draft, whether it was in 2021, 2022, the players that you signed in those off seasons, and knowing that I believe it's only like a handful of guys that's still here that he will acquire, whether through trade, through free agency. But there's some people like myself who, given how bad and how much turmoil that was going on with this franchise, it's still kind of hard to truly judge Caserio in the way. And John, you alluded to it early on in the show, and I want to bring it back up. I do believe that these next couple of weeks leading up to the trade deadline is going to be very telling on what Nick Caserio first 3 years as the general manager of the Houston Texans is going to be like. And I also think this is going to be the determining factor into whether or not he remains the general manager for this organization. And I only say that because remember, prior to the draft, there was some rumors, some reports that he could possibly leave and head back to New England. I always thought that that report was kind of BS, but at the same time, given everything that's been going on with Nick Caserio, I think these next couple of weeks are going to be very important for his tenure, not just for this season and not just for his job, but setting his franchise up beyond this season.
I look at Nick Caserio right now the same way I did, and I think the only thing that's going to change personally for me is to see if he's going to get aggressive to put this team in place to actually go out there and win this division. I give a lot of credit to DeMeco Ryans. I've given a lot of credit to, like, we still don't know. I mean, some of us know, but, who can you accredit to the drafting of C.J. Stroud, right? I do look at Nick Caserio and some of his offseason signings or decisions. Dalton Schultz has played well in the last couple of weeks, making sure that you bring back – oh, wow, the Astro game is on. Making sure that you bring back Steven Nelson has paid off dividends, all things considered. Robert Woods has been good in his role for Houston, though still overpaid, not counting his pockets, but he's been good for Houston. And so when you look at the success of this team through the course of the first 6 weeks, some of those offseason acquisitions are playing big for Houston. How Nick Caserio and this team maneuvered through the offensive line issues, right? They went 3 weeks without giving up a sack, I believe. So you look at that and you think to yourself, okay, that's great. I'm going to take it from a C to a C plus.
Fair.
And I think that's fair. I do want to see if he gets aggressive, right? Who do they play? Right now, the team that leads this division, when you beat by 20 points, their next game is versus the Saints, the team that you just beat. Now, if they lose this game, I think that puts Houston in a better position to go again. Go get aggressive to make sure that this roster is as talented as it can be. I think a C plus was good for Nick Caserio. I'm judging him off what he can do moving forward because if we're being honest, this team does have a shot. But his offseason acquisitions, Jimmy Ward has played good for Houston once he's started playing ball. Who else am I missing? Hassan Ridgeway, I think it's been good for Houston. Sheldon Rankins has been.
Devin Singletary. Like the man had a very good offseason.
With Devin Singletary, I want to give him Devin Singletary, but then again, I don't know
because I kind of feel like
they're on coaching. The lack of opportunities for
it was the lack of opportunity because it's like how can you judge somebody when the opportunity wasn't there? Because what was it against the Falcons? He had no handoffs,
no carries, carries.
So my point exactly. And then you split carries with Damian Pierce, and you end up being arguably, if not the second best running back on the field when you look at both teams. So you got to give him that too.
In that case, I can bump it up to a B, solid B minus. But again, we're gonna revisit this again because if he comes out swinging by the trade deadline to make one move, and I think Houston is right under $6 million in cap space, that's enough for you to make a move that makes sense. Is that move a D tackle? Is that move another offensive weapon? What is that move? I think for Houston, those are the top two D tackle or an offensive weapon for CJ. Those are the top two needs. But I think I can go ahead and say, in fairness, a B is fine for Nick Caserio. Thank you guys for checking out today's episode of the Locked On Texan podcast. Be sure to subscribe, like, and comment on YouTube and wherever you listen to your podcast. Give me a follow on Twitter at John_Hickman12. Also find me on Bleacher Report, the app, under John Hickman. Once again, shout out to my class 2010 of Rouse Shaw, baby. Love y'all. 2010, 2011. We got more Texans talk throughout the week, so make sure you stick around because it's the bye week, but we still saying hello to y'all every day.
Yes, sir. And as always, I'm your host, Cody M. Davis. Please remember to follow me on Twitter at CodyDavis_24. Once again, that's Cody COTYDAVIS _24. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, peace.
Go Astros.